Good afternoon. Welcome back to the afternoon session of today, after which, of course, we have an evening session of Mr. Shyam Benegal. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of all of us and the National Institute of Advanced Studies to welcome Professor Sourav Mukherji, who is Associate Professor of Organization Behavior at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. He's visited NIAS earlier for our executive courses, and we are very happy that he has found time to come back to address our people today. He's originally an engineer, graduated from IIT Kharagpur and a PhD from IIM Bangalore. He's been working on a variety of topics in management, including in the areas of emerging organizational forms, interrelations between corporate strategy and structure, and knowledge management. You might have seen the paper of his, the case study which he normally talks about, the shuttle disaster case study, which is part of the reading material which we have distributed in the reading handout. But he's not talking about that today. But since he's done that earlier, and it is a very interesting case study, I think it's been put as part of your reading thing. Now, after he's had a wide variety of experience in working. After his engineering, he has worked with firms like IBM and Oracle. He was also part with the Boston Consulting Group, where he worked as a strategy consultant in projects involving corporate structuring, mergers and acquisitions. He's currently engaged in studying the managerial and organizational innovations that have contributed to the competitiveness of leading Indian organizations in software services, automotive components, and pharmaceutical industries. This ties in, this particular concern with innovations and growth of leading Indian companies ties in very much with what Professor Ramamurthy and others were talking about, the new age growth of Indian science and technology establishments, which are coupled with certain Indian business concerns. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us, Professor Mukherji.
Thank you, Sundar. Good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Shall we have this one on or? Okay. Great. Every time I was standing up, the light was going out. So let's hope that that's not a indication of shape of things to come. Right. I normally, as Sundar just pointed out, come and discuss a case on Columbia going up into the space and exploding. That was some year back, which killed one of our leading stars of the country. This time I thought I'll do slightly different because this is so much about leadership, and we have been, me and my colleague Professor J. Ramachandran of IIM Bangalore, we have been doing some research on about Indian companies who are in a poised to assume leadership position in the international markets. So that's the thesis what I will come and share with you in terms of, this is a research which is going on for about 3 years, and we are now in a fairly good position to come and discuss the results or what is the idea that we have still now. I know the standard format is that I speak for an hour or so, and then for half an hour you can ask question and answer. I will change the format a bit, and what I would request you is let's keep it free flowing. So while I will come and try to go through my slides in some particular order, please feel free to make it interactive whenever you want. So if you have a question, please ask me, and I mean there's no point in keeping the question at the end of the session because I might be covering too much of material, and by that time you might just forget about the question. So please feel free to interrupt me as we go along. Right. So this slide tells you that how the nature of exports of India have changed. So to some extent this explains the motivation of our study, to see that how have the Indian firms, or more specifically exports of commodities and services, come and impacted the global economy, and has there been any change in the nature of exports. So what we see on the first slide is a map from 1950 to 2001. That's where, you know, that's kind of up to the point where you get data from Ministry of Commerce and Industry. When we were doing this particular thing sometime middle of last year, these data takes a little bit of time to come into public domain after proper verification. and you find that there is a definite what we would say change in the nature of the curve somewhere around here. Now visually it is quite apparent, but if you run a statistical test, a chow test or something where has there been a significant shift in the slope of the curve, so that's around that point 91, 92. Now does it surprise us? Obviously not. 91, 92 is the time when liberalization happened, and even if I was probably not showing you anything like this and asked you that, tell me, guess, just come and guess that what would be the year in which there would have been a change in the nature of commodity or nature of exports from India, I think all of you would have guessed 91, 92. In fact, we were very surprised that it was a nice copybook case, because some of us thought that maybe, you know, after the policy changes happen, for it to actually show up on the curve, it might take a few years. So in economics, we call it the lag effect. So we were expecting probably it to happen. So you will notice that, you know, there has been a change, but nevertheless it's not yet stabilized. So the exact nature would be apparent within the next 4 or 5 years. This is again very interesting in the sense that you will find that the proportion of commodities which are knowledge intensive in nature. So you can, of course, these are certain approximations which we did in saying that there is a basket of exports. Now some of them are typically knowledge intensive services, software, pharmaceutical. We would come and talk about them as knowledge intensive services. Shall I take a break or? Okay, so I can continue talking. Whereas if you look at certain other exports like jute, for example, the knowledge intensity of that particular export is very less. So we were trying to see that has that commodity basket in terms of knowledge intensity, has it changed or has it not? And obviously you find that there has also been a change around that. The next slide what we have is that we are trying to show that which are some of those sectors. So while that is an overall aggregated economy view, when the slide comes up, you will find that we are now breaking it apart by sectors, by particular industries, and try and see that because now we know that it is around 92, 93 where the nature of exports started to change, which are those sectors who were prominent contributors to exports before 91, 92 and after 91, 92. So it's kind of a classic 2 by 2 where before and after, etc. And we find that there are certain sectors like software and pharmaceutical which had not been great contributors prior to 91, 92, but have been significant contributors after 91, 92. So we thought that, well, these are certain sectors which we are certainly very, very interesting. There were certain other sectors like engineering goods which maintained their contribution. So they were significant contributions before and they were also significant contributors after. And we will pick up the auto component sector among these group of industries and describe you the case of Bharat Forge about how they were able to establish themselves in the global market. And tragically, there are certain other sectors. For example, if you look at the textiles or maybe the gems and jewelry to some extent, not fully, these were significant contributors to the export basket before 91, 92, but post 91, 92 haven't been able to make up the mark. So it gives some kind of understanding of which are the sectors which are doing well, which are the sectors which have been impacted negatively by liberalization. And we believe that it will have a lot of policy implications. So it's not for us to discuss everything here. So we will not look at the failure stories or stories which have not been able to consolidate. But my aim here is to look at 3 dominant sectors who have been significant, who have done significantly well. So we will look at the pharmaceutical sector, and more specifically, I will tell you the cases of 2 companies, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories and Ranbaxy's. Okay, so how have they done post liberalization? In the auto component sector, I will talk about Bharat Forge. I already mentioned about it. And in the software service sector, because globalization of Indian companies cannot be discussed without talking significantly about the Indian software sector. So we will talk about the software service industry, because I will not pick up the champions by themselves. So I will not pick up TCS, but I will assume that I will talk about the industry and assume that TCS has done better than the industry, that's why they are the market leaders, whereas there will be others who might not be as good, etc. But actually the significant difference is that in the software industry you find the success as almost an industry-wide phenomenon, which is not the case in auto component, which is not so much the case in pharmaceutical industry. So that's the reason why we will do an industry level study as far as the software is concerned, and we will also look at, time permitting, the interesting case of iFlex, which is not software services, but it's a software product company. Why iFlex? Because it's a success story, and yet it is in the domain where even within the IT sector you will find that very often it is told that Indian companies are very good in services but haven't done so well in products. So we are looking at the case of iFlex and saying that how is it that while we have a lot of success stories in terms of software services, how is it that this company was able to succeed as far as products is concerned, right? So this is what, this is what I was talking about. So we will do software, we will do drugs and pharmaceuticals. Engineering goods is something which we will take up one example. Jute and tea, I mean these are the unfortunate cases. Ready-made garments have done well, but not so great. I was sorry about gems and jewelry, I think I mentioned it wrongly. I mean they are also similar as engineering goods. We haven't yet researched this sector too much. It looks very interesting, but we haven't done any research there as of now. We plan to do that. So these are largely the research questions, that how did the Indian firms, what are the actions, processes they undertook to make themselves successful, and these are the cases which we will come and discuss here. Any questions at this point of time, or shall I move on? Okay, so which one do you think are most interesting, or which one should we start with? I am asking this because I have a feeling that we might not have enough time sometimes to cover all of them. So would the audience have any preference? Sir, it might be interesting, but we don't have any research based on that. So I don't think I will be able to do justice to it. So request you to confine to this, because this is what we think we know a little bit. That's why we are coming and sharing it. Not to say that the other sectors are not important. We want to do it from the bottom? Auto component? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So let me go for auto component. Okay, yeah, this is one. Right. So, the peculiarity about auto component sector is that we do not have many stories here. We have one very successful story, and that is the story of Bharat Forge. Now, Sundaram Fasteners, interestingly, we also had interviews with Sundaram Fasteners, and they have been a company who have been very well recognized worldwide because of their quality processes, Deming Award, etc. But overall, if you find their growth, they are still relatively smaller in size. So, and we were having a discussion with Mr. Srinivasan, and he was saying that, look, Sundaram Fasteners historically has got caught up a bit in their joint ventures. So the joint ventures that we had got in earlier, had restricted our growth to some extent, and that's the reason why we have not been having the exponential growth which you might be expecting us to do. But wait and watch, and maybe the next few years we will come and we will be able to impress you quite a lot. So this was what he was telling us. And we also sensed that it's a fairly conservative company. So when you walk into these companies and when you talk to the senior management in these companies, you get this sense, that when you talk of Baba Kalyani in Bharat Forge, he is a fairly aggressive person. Okay, so and you can see it by means of his actions, that the kind of acquisitions which he does, etc. Whereas when you go to Sundaram Fasteners, they are a very traditional conservative company. Better be very, very careful than stick your neck out, etc. And it's very driven by industry conditions. So again, I will not talk of too much of Sundaram Fasteners because these are very impressionistic. I don't want to focus too much on that. But let us come and talk about Bharat Forge a little bit. What is interesting about Bharat Forge is you will see that even today, it's not a very big company, so it's somewhere around 3,200 crores. That's the last turnover of this current financial year, which is far shorter than $1 billion. Okay, and if you compare it with the Ranbaxy, or you compare it with the software industry, obviously they are much bigger. In spite of that, this seems to be a company which has tremendous potential. And just look at this. It has It is today the world's second largest forging company. The world's largest forging company is a company called ThyssenKrupp, which is based in Germany. It's a $10 billion company, but of that $10 billion, only about $1.5 billion comes from forging operations. So, and Baba Kalyani, he was incidentally declared by Business India as the business person of the year in last year, and I was reading his interview and he says that, it will not be long before we will be number one in the world. Couple of reasons. One is that he has a very strong plan of acquisition, but more importantly he says that ThyssenKrupp is a much more diversified company. So, they will not be focusing only on forging, and that is my advantage. I am a very focused forging company. And that is the reason I will very easily overtake them, and I will be number one, rest assured about that. And if you check back the data with ThyssenKrupp, you find that to some extent he is correct. ThyssenKrupp believes that their forging operations is something which is a drag on the bottom line. I mean, forging operation is the most unprofitable among their entire portfolio. They are very smart steel makers, but not so great in forging. So, they are waiting and watching, saying that yes, I have a great business, I am the world leader. It takes a lot of convincing to sell off a business in where you are a world leader, but among their portfolio, that is one component which they are not very comfortable about. So, I think very soon we are going to have a global leader, in spite of the fact that he is not even $1 billion. World's largest axle manufacturer, India's largest exporter of auto components. More importantly, 70% of his revenue come from exports, and 40% of the global workforce total is about 6,400, so roughly 2,500 people is based outside India. So, lot of people look at globalization indexes. He says that how global is your company, determined by how much assets you own overseas, how many employees are based outside, what percentage of your revenue comes from abroad, etc., etc. By those means, this is indeed a very, very global company, what we are talking about. The other interesting fact you will notice about is that it had a very long period of not great growth. I mean, kind of a revenue very much stuck around this 500 to 1000 crore kind of turnover, and then from 2003 2004 onwards, it's having an exponential growth. And when I will show you his acquisitions, you will find that it very nicely explains why he is having such huge growth. But more importantly, let's go back and let's go back to late 80s and early 90s, and I think in more ways than one, the Bharat Forge success was defined by a very important event at that point of time, when Baba Kalyani went and invested, made very huge investment, 150 crores. He sunk into to automate his operations. So, earlier forging was a very manual labor intensive work. It was typically done in a hammer shop. So, some of you would remember, or maybe I remember my engineering lab days where you have to have this hammer and keep on beating down that piece of red hot metal to give it certain shape. Actually, forging used to be done in such a manner. You have the hammer shop where you keep on beating and till the metal gets the desired shape. Now, that was the model in which forging was used to be made, and Baba Kalyani decided that, and even at that point of time, he was operating at 50% of his capacity. So, he did not have enough orders just to even fill his hammer shop. And that was the time when Baba Kalyani went and invested 150 crores. Remember, the turnover of his company at that point of time was 150 crores. And he went and invested 150 crores to create huge capacities by buying automated press lines. So, he went and purchased Weingarten press, which was the state of the art from Germany, and he established this huge press lines. So, there was a lot of apprehension inside the company that he is being absolutely foolish, because as it is, you don't have capacity, you don't have orders, and you are building huge capacities ahead of order. That is a sure recipe for bankruptcy. In fact, that was the time he even had a lot of differences with his father. So, till that time, his father was one who was heading the company, and Baba Kalyani was acting more as an engineer looking after operations. And this kind of risky approach, he had a lot of difference of opinion with his father. The popular press called that it was a white elephant. So, Baba Kalyani has kind of sounded the death knell for the company. He has gone and procured a white elephant, and surely enough, the company is not going to survive. The only company who was betting on Baba Kalyani at that point of time, apart from himself, was ICICI. So ICICI Bank at that point of time provided Baba Kalyani a decent amount of loan and financial support to ensure that he can buy that equipment. We don't know what was the insight which ICICI Bank had at that point of time to finance Baba Kalyani, and that was a very, very defining moment as far as globalization is concerned for Bharat Forge. Why is it? I'll just put down this. Baba said, you know, Baba spent, before he came back to Pune to join his father, he spent a couple of years in forging operations in US companies. Prior to that, he was finishing his engineering from MIT. And he said that I was very clear in my mind that the Indian model of manufacturing, which was very labor intensive, non-automated and not very high on quality, is not going to help us to compete in advanced global markets. So I got to have a process which is highly automated, which can churn out in large scale and which is very high on quality. And I knew that it is a matter of life and death, but if we do not make these kind of significant changes, we are never ever going to be able to compete successfully in the global markets. He was sure that he is going to be a leader in India, but he also knew that depending only on the Indian market is not going to help them. He has to. So it's a combination of passion on one hand, but on the other hand also having a very clear insight about the industry, about the customers. And Baba says that it was possible only because I spent considerable amount of time in the forging industry as a hands-on person, understanding the nuances, understanding my customer. And till a couple of years ago, I mean, when we went and talked to people in the factory, they said that Baba Kalyani was usually the first person in the morning who would come to the factory shop floor. So people would know him as somebody who is extremely hand-on, and he was aware of all the operations of any kind of equipment that was on the shop floor. So nobody could tell him something which he did not know, nobody could take him for a ride, and till some time back he also knew most of the people by first name. So it was, I mean, he ran it as his own company, it was his own company, but he was extremely hands-on. And what he said was that helped me to carry my people along with me even when I was taking some difficult decisions. So even though people were seeing that the press was apprehensive, people were saying that Baba Kalyani was buying a white elephant, the employees of the company still were with him because they had tremendous respect for this person. They knew that he knew his business, he knew what forging was about, he knew what customers is about, and he was also very highly qualified. So it's kind of a leadership lesson that some people lead by example, and Baba Kalyani was an example of that he was hands-on and he was able to carry his people. So he told us something very interesting. He said that when a company like me when somebody from a company like me goes and tells the customer that, you know, I will be able to supply you high quality product, the customer just laughs at me because I am 10,000 miles away from him. You are talking of a customer sitting in North America or maybe Europe. I am 10,000 miles away from them. I am running an operation which is highly, largely manual operation. I don't even have control over the quality, and here I am going and telling them that I want to build a product for you. You can bet on me. So unless and until I am able to show them value, unless and until I am able to show them that this is my competence, they are never going to trust me with the orders. And that was one of the reasons why he set up that huge capacity. So he says that setting up that capacity that was served me in multiple ways. It was something to prove before my customers, but it was necessary for improving my quality. It was also necessary for increasing my credibility even within the organization. So if I go and tell my people that I want to be number one in the world, I want to compete in the global marketplace, even people inside my company are not going to believe me unless and until I show them some tangible evidence that I am serious about it, unless and until I show them that I am putting my money and I am making intensive commitment to the cause. So in more ways than one, that significant investment had very tangible values in terms of improving the quality, but it also had a lot of signal value. And Baba Kalyani was always, when you talk to him, when you hear about his companies, you will find that he was always very keen to carry his people along with him, to build the organization, because he felt that unless and until I am able to make my company an organization which can take care of global opportunities, I might have the opportunity, but they will just pass by. So this is a common theme in most of the companies that we went and studied, including the IT companies, services companies, that we found tremendous amount of innovation which is very managerial in nature, which is very organizational in nature. And the leaders of this company, the senior management of these companies, they were very focused most of the time on trying to build their organization before they can go and capitalize on the opportunity. Because in some sense, I don't have too much control over the opportunities that come my way. It might be happening because of global demand and supply, it might be happening because of some other events in the world economy. But when the opportunities come to me, do I have my people, do I have my organization systems and processes who can actually leverage that opportunity, who can actually take care of the opportunity so that I can sustain it. That's something which comes to us again and again when we look at all of these companies. Okay, so I think I will move on, and you know, if you okay, so this was around 91, 92 when he made that investment, and interestingly enough, it was not an unmitigated success because he set up that press line, and then he thought it will stabilize within a year or so, but it did not. So they had a lot of problem in stabilizing the press line. It took a lot more time than expected. But finally by 94, 95, his line, automatic line was in place. He thought that he had enough capability, at least from the technology side, to be a supplier to the global market. But in spite of that, I'll take you back to this slide. You see that he primarily remained a supplier to the Indian market. So in spite of the fact that he had built up a tremendous capacity which was state of the art, and he was also making a lot of changes as far as the organization was concerned, he was unable to make a breakthrough into the global marketplace. So let me just run you through some of the things which he did between say 94, 95, 96 to 2000. All the good things that any management school can teach you, or any great leader or manager will teach you. He attacked the company on 5 fronts. He had to upgrade people and processes, improve operational efficiency, build design competencies. So he says, you know, low cost cannot be a big sustainable advantage as far as forging is concerned, because after all, a forged component is only a very small part of a commercial vehicle or a passenger car. So if my forged component is not more than 10% of the total vehicle cost, then I don't have great value in front of my customer. I can, you know, of his total bill of material cost, maybe I will be reducing it from 10% to 8%. But for the 2% reduction, he is not going to take a lot of risk by outsourcing it to somebody who is far away from his location. So cost cannot be my only advantage. I got to build certain other advantages in order to go and sell my product. So build design competencies. He also went about diversing his portfolio. So today he is not only looking at forged components in the automotive market, but he is also looking at the oil exploration market, which uses a lot of forged components. He is looking at the airlines market, which uses a lot of forged components, etc. So product diversification. More importantly, quite a lot of financial restructuring. So a lot of our Indian family-run business have tremendous amount of cross holdings. So they have multiple companies with ownership structure, which looks very, very diffused and confusing to an analyst who is sitting abroad. And he said that one of the things which he did very smartly, he said that the cost of debt in India is very, very high, whereas the cost of debt in the global market is much lower, because the interest rates are much lower in the global market. And he also has this belief that interest rates are unlikely to fluctuate too much in America if I go and borrow in North America, because he was telling us that the Americans are a very highly leveraged society. Most of the Americans are full of debt, you know, because they use too much of credit cards and mortgages, etc. So the Americans, so in increasing their interest rate is a huge political issue there. So they will only increase by minor points here and there. They cannot increase their interest rates the way we can do it in other countries. So it is always safer to go and borrow from America than, you know, borrow. So what he did was he retired all his domestic debts and went and started borrowing in the international market. It also served one other purpose. He said that I am exporting to the American market, right? And if I also borrow from the American market, then it is a natural hedge, because if there is currency depreciation, or appreciation, then these two will work in other ways, right? So if there is currency appreciation, then my exports will become expensive, but then I have to pay lesser debt servicing cost and other way around. So he used the finance as a natural hedging mechanism for his exports. So he did all these things, which if you look at, really builds a very nice and consistent story to 5 years as far as the cars are concerned or commercial vehicle is concerned, which means that when Toyota is deciding to manufacture its latest car, say the hybrid car called Prius, then even 4 or 5 years before the car actually hits the market, it will sit with all its supplier and said that, you know what, this is the design that I have, this is the market projection that I have, and I am going to churn out this much amount of volume in this particular geography. Are you going to be able to build capacity to supply me the component? So it's a very tightly controlled supply cycle. And hence the car which you see on the road today has already been planned 4 or 5 years back in terms of its supplier network. It is very, very difficult for a newcomer to break into that network because you were just not there 5 years back. There is also one more problem that he faced all during this phase was that the global automotive industry was going through a very bad phase. So even it's still on. I mean, if you look at, except for the Japanese manufacturers, most of the passenger car manufacturers worldwide are making huge losses. So constantly the General Motors, the Fords, the Chryslers of the world were saying that we want to rationalize our suppliers. What does rationalization of supplier means? It means that they were reducing their number of suppliers. So in a world where you are reducing even your existing suppliers, it's extremely difficult for a newcomer to come into your supplier list because they are not even going to listen to you, even if you are somebody who has the competence, who has the ability. So that was his problem. In spite of having done all the right things, he doesn't seem to be making those kind of breakthroughs which he needed to have a foothold into the global market. So what does he do? I mean, what is the only option that is left at that point of time? He goes and acquires companies so that he can get the customers. So what he did was, yes sir. Yeah. Okay, these are typically, sir, your quality terminologies, total production management, total productive maintenance, sorry, yeah, 7S they have some safety, I'm sorry, I have forgotten. So, yeah, they are traditional. So, what we are saying is they went to, Kaizen is continuous improvement, you know, in Japanese. So, they actually went to Japanese advisors, came and asked them, how can I improve my operations? So, reducing inventory, increasing the operational efficiency, etc., etc. Yeah, so this is what I was telling about, that all-round efforts was not sufficient to provide a stronghold into the international market, downturn, inability to get the accounts playing customer acquisition circle, and that's the time when he went about and acquired this small company called Kirkstall, which was actually a subsidiary of Dana. So Dana is a big name as far as commercial vehicles are concerned globally. So Kirkstall was a facility in UK which was up for sale. I mean, it was going bankrupt, not doing too well, again, you know, because of that global downturn in automobile market, and he went and acquired Kirkstall. It's a small acquisition, but interestingly what it did was, it gave, Kirkstall had a very long list of customers, and they had already entered into those long-term agreements. So straight away he got an agreement entry into Iveco, which is again an interesting name, a big name as far as trucks are concerned, and Renault, which is the maker of cars in Germany. So he said he went and acquired Kirkstall, and that was the breakthrough that he was looking about. He said that I was not bothered about the assets, I was not bothered about the people, etc., etc., but I was very, very critical about the customer list which I was going to acquire, and he was sure that once he is able to put his foot inside the door, then it would be much easier for him to take the customer, show his facility, show his ability, and hence, you know, convert them into a long-term customer.
Was it Renault or some German car maker?
Which one?
You mentioned Iveco.
Yeah.
Which is a Dutch company.
Iveco, I am not very sure. Renault is a French company. Both. Yeah.
There was a slip of the tongue. You said German, so I was wondering.
No. Yeah. So he acquired Kirkstall, who had among their long list of customers Iveco and Renault as the two big names which he mentioned, which were at least familiar to me. So that is the time when he got the breakthrough, you know, in terms of going and acquiring Kirkstall, and then he followed it up with a series of other acquisitions. Okay, And there's a nice plan behind each and every acquisition. What he said was that, look at in December 2003, this was the time when we were visiting Bharat Forge. So we went there around 2003, 2004, and that was the time when he had made that acquisition of a company called CDP in Germany. And he said that when I looked around, I found that CDP is a company that was up for sale, and CDP has tremendous design capabilities. So me as an Indian company, Bharat Forge, I am very good in manufacturing, but my deficiency is something like this, that I need a drawing, I need a two-dimensional drawing to convert it into a 3D projection and then make a component out of it. But I cannot look at a car and then come out with the three-dimensional drawing of a forged product. So that was his figurative way of telling us, but effectively what he was saying was that it was very difficult for me. Bharat Forge did not have the competencies at that point of time to sit with their suppliers, to sit with the original equipment manufacturers, the big car manufacturers, and at a design stage and decide that what should be the forged component, etc. To do that, they needed additional skills and competencies, and his acquisition of CDP Germany in December 2003 was primarily meant for acquiring the design skills. And it's a very interesting story that if you look at the next acquisition, CDP AT, which these two companies are not related, even though the names sound very, the AT, that A here stands for aluminium. So he also realized that aluminium forging is going to be the next big thing as far as forging is concerned, because of the lightness of the aluminium material. He was saying that Bharat Forge is not very strong in passenger car vehicle, they were very strong in commercial vehicle, and in passenger car vehicle, especially when you are looking of small cars, you need much lighter forged components. And we did not have skill sets as far as aluminium forging is concerned, hence once again he goes and acquires this CD Aluminitech or something in Germany for building his competency. So each one of his acquisitions, whatever he did, his series of acquisitions between 2003 and 2005, 2000 was a bit earlier, was very, very focused on achieving one specific purpose. Interestingly, you find that he has not made any acquisition in 2006, which happened to be the hottest year of mergers and acquisitions all over the world. Okay, so he seemed to have captured the M&A understanding before this wave came, and last year he was like, did not do anything. And in the latest interview which I was reading, he said that, okay, last year was a consolidation phase, so just wait, 2007 again I'm going to start my acquisition, and some factory in Mexico is being talked about as his next target. What is the overall idea behind his acquisition? What he's saying was that he is a great fan of the software industry, and he said that he picked up this in the software industry. We use this term called onshoring and offshoring. So he said even in forging, I am going to have a model which is called dual shoring, or it is distributed development. And he said for every specific activity, very critical activity, I will have it done at two places in the world. So one, it will minimize my risks, and the customer also has an option of sourcing it from wherever they want. So what the model that he had in mind is that he says that, look, China is extremely good in manufacturing, and when I say good in manufacturing, it is not only about skill sets, but the total cost of manufacturing is always slightly lesser than India because of their superior infrastructure, because of the lesser bureaucratic cost that they have, because of slightly cheaper power that they have in China. So I need to have a beachhead for manufacturing in China. India is extremely good for its engineering skills. So he says that I know we are not very good in low cost manufacturing. It's a wrong notion to think that India is extremely good in low cost manufacturing. China can defeat you any day as far as low cost manufacturing is concerned. What we are very good at is value added manufacturing. So that's what he called engineering skills. And he said I will combine the Chinese manufacturing with Indian engineering skill sets. And then he said that however, India and China are very far away from the advanced markets of the world, and you will never acquire design competencies unless and until you are very close to the customer. And he again cites the example of software industry, where he said that, look, one of the reasons why we are not great in making great products is simply because we are so far away from the advanced markets, we are so far away from the customers. And hence he is very clear in his mind that the design competencies need to come from places which are very close to the customer, which are situated in the advanced markets of the world, in Germany and in United States. So these are his two of the beachheads. He also thinks that he needs to have a position in Japan, but unfortunately he hasn't had the right targets. He hasn't found an acquisition target which he thinks should be good enough to go and acquire in Japan. He also believes that the Japanese are fairly conservative as far as outsourcing is concerned, and hence most of their forging operations are done in-house. I mean, they are still very reluctant to outsource it to Bharat Forge or any other company for that matter. So Japan is one link missing, maybe South America is one more link, but he has two design shops, one in Germany, one in United States, two manufacturing facilities, one in China and one in India, and that's what he called, you know, his dual shoring model, which kind of reflects the globally distributed model, which has by now become a lot famous thanks to our software industry. Okay, so I think that is what I had given this limited time as far as Bharat Forge is concerned. If you have anything specific to ask, you can, or otherwise I can move on. Shall we? Okay. Okay, so let me go down to the pharmaceutical industry and catch my breath. Okay, in the pharma industry, before I go to the slide, I think I need to give you a little bit of background. If you remember that we have not, as a country, we have till I think not before 2006, we had never realized product patents. So we had only recognized process patents. What it meant was that, see, the worldwide, in the most of the developed countries of the world, they recognize product patents. So if Pfizer comes with a cholesterol reducing drug, then they file for a patent either in Europe or in US. In US it is US FDA, and when US FDA grants license for production or recognizes the patent, then they are given monopoly rights to sell the product for the next 19 years. So from the date of filing till you get 19 years of exclusive license, exclusive right to sell the particular product. So if anybody else wants to manufacture the product, they will have to pay royalty to the original inventor. And this whole patent regime was created because invention or innovations in the pharmaceutical industry is extremely expensive. I mean, today's cost typically says it takes about $1 to $2 billion to take out a particular drug, and hence unless and until we grant certain incentives to the innovator, nobody is going to spend that much amount of money. So they recognized patent regime, but our government, India, never recognized a product patent simply because they said that we are too poor. So what happens is, if you have patent, since you are granting monopoly rights, the price of medicine becomes fairly high. So obviously, you know, you have monopoly rights, and if you think that there is a cholesterol reducing drug which only I alone can sell into the marketplace, and there is a huge demand from people for reduction of cholesterol, then you can, you know, raise the prices to whatever limit possible. But India as a country and a lot of other countries in the world who are typically poor or developing cannot afford such high cost of drugs, and they never realized the product patent till 2006. We were forced to recognize a product patent because of WTO. What did we realize? What did we recognize? We said that we will recognize only process patent. So what happens is that if Pfizer comes out with this drug, then any Indian company is free to replicate the drug, sell the drug without paying any royalty to Pfizer, provided the process that they follow is different from what Pfizer was doing. Okay? So you cannot completely copy the process, but you can make a little bit of change, and then you have a product which you can sell. So this was kind of actively debated with effect that for a very long while, and you would be very familiar with this, lot of the leading edge drugs would never come to India. They would only come after the expiry of the patent. So when the patent would expire, then the company would say, anyway, I mean, now the cost of the drug would go down, and hence they would come to India. Otherwise, a lot of the leading edge drugs won't come. At the same time, Indians would, these Indian companies had developed a lot of skills in process innovation. So rather than going and innovating or inventing a new molecule, Indian companies, the critical skill Indian pharmaceutical firms needed to do was to pick up a molecule or pick up a drug from United States or North America, look at it and try and decide that what are its components. That's probably not very difficult to do when you do a chemical analysis, but then figure out how to manufacture it, right? How to manufacture it, just change a little bit about the process which followed by the original inventor, and lo and behold, you can sell the drug as far as India is concerned. So what they did was it kept our prices low. More interestingly, it actually made companies like Ranbaxy and Dr. Reddy's very expert in process innovation. So in some sense, nowhere else in the world did they have any company had so much of competence in what we would maybe call sometimes reverse engineering. So give them a drug, and in no time they would be able to reverse engineer it and say that, okay, this is the way in which it can be manufactured without violating the process patent regime. So that was kind of the background in which the pharmaceutical industry was operating as far as India is concerned, and we were doing relatively well. I mean, you would hear a lot of these companies not only selling in India, and but selling in other unregulated markets, and we call it unregulated all those markets who do not recognize product patents. So Russia is a classic example of an unregulated market, where again there is no recognition of product patents, so you can come and sell drugs without paying royalty to the original inventor. So that's how the story runs. Around mid of 80s, there was a very significant change in the American market. Mid of 80s, but the impact of the change happened later on. That was something called the Waxman-Hatch Act. Two gentlemen by the name Waxman and Hatch, they were extremely concerned, two senators, they were extremely concerned with the rising cost of healthcare as far as America was concerned, right? So because these companies seem to be charging very highly for their innovative drugs, these people, the average healthcare cost of the American companies was very high. Also, there was a strong nexus between the insurance companies and the hospitals, etc. And the senators were very focused to reduce the healthcare cost. And what they said was, yes, we have recognized that the product patent regime, and this is a free country, so we need to incentivize the innovators. But after the expiry of the drug, let us simplify the process to a large extent such that any other company can quickly bring that product into the marketplace. What was earlier happening was that, let me go with the example of Pfizer itself. Now, Pfizer had a product patent on the anti-cholesterol drug. Now, when they would approach towards the end of their expiry, what they would do was they would file some additional patents. They would say that, you know what, we have now changed a little bit of the molecule, and hence instead of taking this drug twice a day, you can take it only once a day. And that is an additional patent for the next 19 years. So this policy was called evergreening. So you would keep on filing patent again and again such that nobody else has the license to manufacture your drug, and if in effect you would maintain the drug at a very high price. Now these senators came down very heavily on this practice, and they said that even if you are filing for a patent, every data pertaining to the tests that you have made, etc., should be made available to your rival drug companies. So yes, I recognize that you can have a patent on a powerful innovation, but I will prevent you from evergreening the patent unless and until you really have a very strong cause for filing for additional patents. So they kind of loosened the market, they kind of enabled, made it to some extent a level playing field for non-innovators to go and manufacture drugs post-expiry. Even post-expiry it was very, very difficult, and that gave rise to this creation of an industry which we today take for granted called the generics industry. So the generics industry effectively is about manufacturing drugs that are off patent, and it has become extremely easy. They also reduced a lot of bureaucratic hassles that were there to manufacture these off patent drugs, and giving rise to a lot of large companies who are only focused on generics drugs. And this created a beautiful opportunity for both our Indian pharmaceutical companies and some very big pharmaceutical companies from world over. I don't know whether you are familiar with a company called Teva of Israel. They are the largest generics company in the world, running into billions of dollars. In fact, there was in between a bit of rumor that Teva was trying to acquire Dr. Reddy's, and effectively what we are saying is that, okay, remember what I told you, the Indian companies had great skills in terms of reverse engineering, right? And now suddenly this opportunity was created where reverse engineering was absolutely critical, because you have a drug which is approaching towards the end of the patent and all the data is available, so all you need to do is go and manufacture the drug post patent expiry. So there were certain rules were framed, and I will not get into those details, that even when you want to manufacture a generic drug, you have to file for application with the US FDA, that is Federal Drug Administrator, and they would grant you license and you can start selling off. And both Ranbaxy and DRL actually have leveraged that opportunity from middle of 90s onwards or early 90s onwards to establish themselves in the global marketplace. So that is kind of the story of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, and And why only Reddy's and Ranbaxy? There were a lot of other companies who have jumped into that bandwagon to become very strong generics player. But what happened was that this is a very, I would say, a simplistic description of the extremely complicated behind the scene maneuvers that goes on in this particular industry. And why is it so? Because it is only just a part of the game to go and manufacture a drug which has gone off patent. Once you manufacture the drug, you also need to have strong distribution networks. You have to establish yourself in the foreign market. You have to go and convince the retailer that when a patient comes, then instead of giving them a drug which has been manufactured by Pfizer, who is the original innovator, or a GlaxoSmithKline, you are going to substitute that drug with something that has been manufactured by an Indian company. So you need to build what we call in strategic management terminology, complementary assets, to actually be able to carry your drugs from the manufacturing stage to the end product. Not only that, filing of patents, etc., is very, I would say, a legally intensive process. So you have to move around the regulatory environment, because very often some of these big companies would counter your patent application, counter your application, not a patent application, by saying that they would always try to evergreen their patent. So when Ranbaxy files for a patent to manufacture the generic drugs, the original innovator, maker of the drug, comes and says that no, the Ranbaxy is not following the right set of processes, and there is every other, I have certain other inventions along the pipeline, so you should grant me the patent rather than allowing them to manufacture the generics drug. So very soon, all these companies, Ranbaxy, DRL, and a lot of other companies who are going and competing in the generic space, realize that it's manufacturing the drug. The technology per se is just one element of it. One of the very bigger challenges is to understand the maze of regulatory framework which exists. So it's a completely different kind of skill sets that one needs to go and compete into the international market, which needs distribution skills, which need the legal skills, all in a completely alien market. And that is where the story of these two companies becomes very, very interesting. In case of Ranbaxy, you find that there was a very structured way of going into the international market. They first, around 94, 95, quite like Bharat Forge, they went and took advice from academicians and international practitioners to say that how can I globalize my company? If I have to go and compete in advanced markets, then I need to develop managerial talent. I need to change the mindset of my people so that they don't feel cowered down, they don't feel apprehensive about going and competing in the advanced market. How do I get into, I cannot build up legal skills, but how do I develop skills so that I can develop relationships in getting into joint ventures with some of the bigger names. So Ranbaxy got into a joint venture with a company called Eli Lilly, and which is a very famous pharmaceutical company. Dr. Reddy's got into a joint venture with a company called Shine, which was very focused on pharmaceutical regulatory affairs. So having managed all these complex relationships in the international market, it soon they realized that their success was now making the incumbents, the original competitors, very, very apprehensive. What was happening was that the big companies like Pfizer, Glaxo, they were initially not very concerned about the generics market. But the moment they found that Indian companies like Dr. Reddy's, Ranbaxy, or even the Teva of Israel are going and creating very large revenues through their generics market, then these companies also started floating their generics business. And there was a very heavy competitive retaliation happening. And that's a scenario which still gets played out in the international marketplace. The regulations are becoming stronger, the litigations are becoming much lengthier, and you will find that some of these companies actually coming and establishing subsidiaries which are very much focused on the generics business. So you don't, you would have seen, or you would have noticed that a lot of people start questioning that is the honeymoon period as far as the Indian pharmaceutical industry, is it over? Because it seems that now it is becoming increasingly difficult to go and make a lot of money in these industries. Now what has the Ranbaxys and the DRLs of the world, what exactly are they doing to counter that? Because these companies with whom now they are competing are much larger companies than the size of the Indian companies are. And some of what they are doing is they are diversifying into process related innovations even further. So what they are saying was, we don't have the capacity to actually find out the latest molecule. So drug invention, drug discovery is not something probably which we will be able to do very quickly, but there are some things which we call NDDS, new drug delivery system. So what they are saying is, they are doing this process related research which is very interesting work. They are saying that we realize that a lot of heart patients are also patients who suffer from high pressure. So in general, there are a lot of patients who take medicine for heart and medicine for high pressure together. Now can I develop a combination medicine which is not combined at a chemical entity level, but it is combined more at a physical level, so that the patient, instead of taking 8 doses a day, needs to take only 4 doses a day. They are also working on delivery systems whereby you can, instead of taking a drug 4 times a day, you can only need to take only once a day, and the drug, once it gets inside the system, it will have a controlled release. So it will keep on releasing in small doses into the body. So they are working in a lot of these kind of innovations, so that the threat which is being posed by much larger companies can be countered to some extent. There is an interesting contrast between the two companies, and that's the reason why I have given the topic. In the sense that Ranbaxy was right from the beginning, and when I say beginning, it is when they were embarking on the global marketplace. They were saying that I don't want to become an inventor of a molecule. I don't want to do that. My primary focus is on the generics market, and I want to build on top of that. But compared to that, and that's the reason why they went into relationships with larger US companies. They set up their distribution network, and they built their own organization, and they had a much more structured approach. If you look at Dr. Reddy's, Dr. Anji Reddy himself being a scientist, he was right from the day he wanted to create a company which is an innovator company. He wanted to invent the latest drug, because he very strongly believed that if I am able to invent a drug, then I will do a lot more service to mankind than if I am going on servicing this generics marketplace. So you see the entrepreneur in him again and again, you see the risk taker in him. So for him, a generics business is a necessary evil. Why is it necessary? Because it will give me money to do my invention, to do my innovation. So he and his son-in-law runs this generics business, and he takes care of the American market. So they have this very interesting conversation saying that, okay, you go and do whatever you like in the American market, etc., but just give me the money so that I can make a lot more investment as far as my invention and innovation are concerned. So even in the same industry, we find two slightly different models from one another, but there is a lot of convergence in terms of saying that they are competing in the global markets primarily through the generics marketplace, and eventually they are all migrating towards making innovations and inventions which are not really focused on the molecule stage, but on the delivery system. Even a lot of these companies, even if they do research on the molecule stage, what they do is they invent the molecule, and up to the phase 1. So any molecule goes through multiple phases they call clinical trials. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, where you start with 1,000 molecules. After phase 1, you reduce the number of molecules which are viable, etc., till finally you arrive at the final molecule after the. And the third phase of clinical trial is when you actually try it out on human beings. So you might start off with rats and other animals, and finally the phase 3 clinical trial, which is the most expensive trial, is the one when you try it on human beings. So a lot of these companies are saying we do not have money to carry it through all through the phases, but after having identified one interesting molecule after phase 1, you sell it off to one of the bigger companies. So largely we are talking of de-risking the whole innovation process, taking it up to a certain stage, and then passing it on to bigger companies who have the resources to take it to the final phases. So I don't need to go through it, but these are some of the things which are happening in the international marketplace. Seeing that the success of the Indian companies, the innovator drug companies themselves, what they are doing is they are authorizing generics. So when their product is coming close to the patent expiry, they are picking up one particular company and saying that I am giving you exclusive license to now sell off the product. Why are they doing that? Because moment the patent expires, the price of the drug falls by 90 to 95%. So a drug which is $100 becomes about $7 or $8. But if you get into exclusive licensing with one particular company, then you can actually restrict the price erosion. So yes, by being generics, the prices will fall, but not to the extent if it is a free market. Now, what happens is, moment they do some things like that, it gets into the court of law. So the Ranbaxys, DRLs, and a lot of other companies will challenge it in a court of law. But the point is, playing the litigation game in multiple geographies, etc., is an immensely complex job. And in Europe, you have so many countries to go through. So even if you win a case in Belgium, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do the same in France. And more muscle, more financial resources the incumbents have, the foreign companies, the big companies have, better are they in a situation to influence the legal system, to influence the judges. And by influence, I am not necessarily talking of in the wrong sense of the term, but put up all their muscles. So these companies are saying that if you are big, if you are a big pharmaceutical company, your ability to win the cases is also very, very large. Your ability to get an injunction is very high, and in the meantime, you can make a lot of money. So if you are able to stall the process, if you are able to at least get a window of selling your product when the patent expires, if you get a window for about a year or so, then you make enough money which can pay more than 5 or 10 times the litigation cost. So the game has become really complex, and that's the reason why it is not very clear, that whether Ranbaxy and DRL and other Indian companies would emerge as a clear winner, unless unlike the Bharat Forge case, where I think we can be a lot more confident. But these are cases of companies where we are very, very hopeful because of the wonderful thing they have done so far, but it can become a very, very, very difficult game. One of the other reason of this whole thing is because the multinational companies have been in India from a very long time. So most of the big names we can talk about GlaxoSmithKline, they have been in India already. So just as Ranbaxy and DRL, they also have the ability to leverage the competencies which any Indian company can have. So even their subsidiaries are able to recruit people who are trained in process skills, and whatever Ranbaxy and DRL can do, they can also do sitting in India, which is not the case as far as Bharat Forge is concerned. So the pharmaceutical industry is a fairly, from my perspective, it's an interesting industry because the final end game is not very apparent. But for people who are running those industries, I think there is quite some time to go for them.
Also, there is this related issue of, you see, if a major plank of the strategy of leading Indian companies has been to, get into the act when a patent in the West has expired.
Yes.
Then, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, then a related issue is the quality of drugs being manufactured in India. I mean, isn't it in terms of the product cycle? Well, once you are, utilizing something which a leading company in the West has given up because the patent has expired.
Yes.
Does it have implications in terms of the quality of products?
Why would you think so? I mean, I'm not very sure on this. Even if the patent expires, you have to obtain a license from the US FDA to even manufacture the generics. So there is no compromise made on actually the quality of the drug, because there the Americans are very, very careful, because they cannot allow somebody to sell the medicine about whom they are not fully sure. So I am not very sure about the apprehension that you are having here in terms of the quality. Yeah. Okay, that's possible. That's possible.
I had, thanks a lot. I had broadly something on those lines in mind.
That's possible.
And also, you see, if the patent of a leading company in the West has expired, well, if that company so wishes, then it can also, apply for renewal of the patent. So as a strategy, that company in the West is not doing so.
Yeah.
Whereas one of your front-running companies is doing so.
Yes.
So I think it has some ramifications in terms of the quality for the consumer at large in the domestic market.
Yeah. Two things I would. It's a good point you are making. One is that why would initially all these companies were not concerned about the generics market. If I am an original inventor, I am not concerned about the generics market, because the whole cost structure of the company needs to be so very different if you are an innovator versus if you are a generics. The same set of medicine, actually the one for an inventor which fetches you $100 fetches a generics company not more than $8 or $9. So hence the kind of people you will have, the kind of structure you will have, the kind of process you will have is far, I would say, not so cost efficient as far as the innovator company is concerned. I mean, how do classic innovating companies look like? They are actually resource rich. They are not cutting corners here and there. They are saying that I will not do such tight cost management simply because I want to give the leeway to everybody so that they can come up with new ideas and new innovation. Whereas a generics company looks so different. A generics company is a very well oiled machinery to cut corners, because we are talking of very thin margins. So we are talking of two different organizational models here, and that is the reason why initially a Pfizer or a Merck or a Glaxo will not attempt to get into generics field, because it's too beneath their dignity. Let me tell you, I mean, to climb down. Rather, they would say that moment my patent expires, I will have enough other molecules in my pipeline as new drugs which will give me a lot of return, so I need not worry. But the thing has changed. The thing has changed now simply because the pipeline for innovation itself has dried quite extensively. So a lot of these companies, while they would have 30-40 molecules to be coming out almost every year as new medicine, today that has dramatically reduced. So they are saying that instead of now they can no longer afford to be the traditional innovative company where there are a lot of resources. Let me tell you again the figure which I told some time back. To push a molecule out into the market, it is typically costing now upwards of $1.5 to $2 billion. Now that's no small amount, especially if your pipeline is not so rich. And that's the reason why now they are turning into the generic space. They are saying, even if I am able to make those $9 or $10, it is good enough for me to actually pay my salaries. And that's the reason why, as you rightly pointed out, the game is becoming increasingly competitive. In fact, today what the large companies are saying was that because I am very large, my ability to innovate actually has gone down. I can manage very complex projects, but to come up with this breakthrough idea, I am probably not the right person to do, and hence they are outsourcing the initial innovation process to small boutique firms. So you will find that in the industry, there are a lot of these small firms which have cropped up who actually do the leading edge research, at least the initial phases, and after that it goes to the bigger company to for them to develop it further and come and market it. So there is a lot of change which is happening in the industry, a lot of churn as far as the business model is concerned, and that is where it is interesting, but both as well as threatening, that I don't know whether it will be surviving. To your first point, I think it is true that if I am very much focused on the generics business, something we are talking of a product which has expired as far as the patent is concerned, yes, it will not definitely be the leading edge product. But given that it is a medicine, and so we have to look at it in a slightly different way, that there hasn't been a lot of new medicines which have been coming, and hence maybe that medicine which was reducing cholesterol 18-19 years ago is still good enough for me to look at that. But I fully agree with you that yes, it will not be as leading edge as if I had recognized the product patent. Incidentally, from 2006 onwards, we have started recognizing product patent. So unless and until a product is post patent expiry, no Indian company can start manufacturing it by going around by making a process, and that has also opened up the door for many of the other companies, for many of the foreign companies to push their latest product at a very high cost, of course, at a very high price in the Indian marketplace. Okay, so let me now go to the software industry, and I guess a lot of you are familiar with this industry, so I will not spend too much of time on some of these aspects. This story, I think a lot of you know, right? That tremendous amount of growth. I have data here only till 2004, 2005. Growth has continued unabated. Let me just point out one interesting thing about this industry. You see this figure, compounded annual growth rate of 43%, and even if you add the two last year's data, even if you take out the contribution of IT enabled services, I think it will be still about 42-43%. Now, nowhere else in the world has anybody seen an industry that has grown at a compounded annual rate of more than 40% over a period of 12 years. So we are seeing a phenomenon here. Now initially you can say that the base was small, hence growth was easy. That is true for the initial part. But what happens as the base grows larger and larger, the natural thing for you to expect was a plateauing of the curve. So the classic S curve where you have a rapid growth and then plateauing off, we are just not seeing that here. Right? So I think that's the reason why it's an extremely interesting industry to look at, and I think we have probably one of the best things that is going as far as the Indian industry is concerned. I am not saying that everything that is happening out from the software industry is fantastic. In fact, Baba Kalyani of Bharat Forge, he says how much he suffers because of the software industry. He said one of my biggest problem is retaining engineering talent, because whichever engineering college I go, all the people actually want to be software developers. Nobody wants to come and work for me for forging operation. So what is he? So he has to be extremely innovative. He is saying that I am going and recruiting graduates, and then he has got into a program with BITS Pilani so that while working they can get a engineering degree from BITS Pilani. Baba Kalyani incidentally was also from BITS Pilani earlier. And for engineers whom he has recruited, he has an arrangement with US University to provide them MS while working itself. But he says that's one of my key problems, that attractive talent. So while he admires the IT industry, in fact he also talks about how the IT industry and he can get into some collaborative relationship, because he said that this is relevant in this particular discussion also. He said that he realizes, see, one of the reasons, let me come back to Baba Kalyani a little bit later. One of the reasons why this industry has grown so phenomenally over the last 10 to 15 years, several reasons have been cited. People have said there was this Y2K problem, and there was this .com boom, and the knowledge of English, the time advantage which we have in terms of working in the daytime when the rest of the world is sleeping, etc. Our knowledge of mathematics. I think all of them are reasons for the success of the industry. But the most fundamental reason why there is a lot of scope for growth even now is simply because total digitization of all the components that we use worldwide has gone up, and it is just going up. What am I saying here? Any component that you use today has significantly more software component, any equipment that you use today, significantly more software component than it would have been having 10 years ago. This piece is likely to have a lot of microprocessors built in as we move along. The person who is taking that photograph, look at any camera today, it has tremendous amount of microprocessors and the software component. You look at your calculator, you look at your cell phone, you obviously computers, you look at your washing machine, your microwave oven, your refrigerator, your television, everything, of course cars, everything that we use has tremendous high amount of software component and chips and microprocessors inbuilt. Who is going to write software program for these components? Because remember, you cannot build these components by buying products from the marketplace. There is too much amount of diversity among these products for somebody to create products that goes inside as software. So it has to be done in a service mode. It has to be highly customized software, and that's the reason why I think the future is extremely bright for TCS, Infosys, Wipro and the software service industries. The advantages which might accrue because of Y2K, because of euro conversion, etc. will be just short-term tendencies. They will come and they will go, but more importantly, because the digital component is going up in each and every product that we are using, I think there is a tremendous scope as far as software industry is concerned. In fact, if you ask yourself, what percentage of the world market does, say TCS is our world, is the largest Indian company, right? Today what, you are about $4.5 billion? You will touch $4 billion. If you ask them, what percentage of the global market do you have? What percentage of the global share either do you have or the Indian market has? I can bet you nobody can give you an answer for that. Because estimates of the global software market varies from $100 billion to $1,000 billion. Because how would you estimate? The kind of the possibilities are enormous, and simply because, and if you look at it that sense, the total industry size today I think is about $25–26 billion. But at that point of time, people are saying that we have just about scratched the surface. It might be at best 5% of the total possibility as far as software services is concerned. So this is an industry where we need not think too much about competition here, because the opportunity is so large that if we are able to maintain our act together, just as our big companies, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, HCL, all of them are doing, I think the potential is enormous. But The downside is that it is a people intensive business. So tapping that opportunity in fact boils down to, apart from of course managing the technology, is managing the supply chain of human beings. Now that is a game which is not easy to understand. That is a game which is constantly evolving because you don't have a model to follow. I mean, for a Ranbaxy or a Dr. Reddy's lab can look at a Merck or a Pfizer to say, okay, this is how a large pharmaceutical company grows. Baba Kalyani can look at maybe Delphi and say, okay, this is the model which an auto component company should follow, and of course I will make my own innovation. But as far as software services is concerned, we don't have any model to look around. We don't have any model where we are saying that maybe we have so much of opportunity that down 5 or 6 years, we might be just having 10 lakh people in one particular organization. Now, how does an organization manage 10 lakh people? Nobody knows. Will the organization survive as one particular organization? Will it get broken down? Will 10 lakh people be able to look at one single team of management as their leaders, or they will need something else? And that's the reason why it's an immensely interesting industry to look at with tremendous amount of possibilities. I will show you this graph, which is not something which we talk about very much. It's a pure productivity graph. So this industry has also made tremendous strides as far as productivity is concerned. If you simply divide the revenue by number of employees, you will find that there has been a tremendous growth. After that, obviously, you can expect a plateauing off. And remember, this is a service industry, so we cannot compare this productivity with a product company. I mean, it will have to be made the right comparisons. Some of the things which came against us. So there was a Y2K problem, but after that the advantage disappeared. Right? There was a .com boom, which was followed by a .com bust. There is from time to time this apprehension that Indians are taking away jobs, so there are visa restrictions and whole stuff. Beauty of the industry is that they have survived, most of them. If you look at this graph, it keeps on growing again and again, and it keeps on growing consistently. Have there been individual losers? Of course there have been. I am not saying every company in this industry have been successful, but people who have been successful have been having extremely good growth as far as this industry is concerned. Okay? This graph is intentionally shown in a very wrong manner, but just to dramatize it. What we are saying is, if you look at the figures, compare it with between 2000 and 2004, the billing rate have actually gone down by 5%. So if TCS or if Infosys is a supplier to say Alcan, and Alcan, if he is a continuous customer, then they will come to Infosys and say, look, I mean, there has to be some loyalty bonus for me. So if your billing rate was X dollars last year, you got to give me a discount. So that's the industry reality. So overall, the average billing rate has gone down. The sales, general and administrative expenses have actually gone up by 10%. Yes, so that's a warning to me. Okay. The employee costs have gone up 17%. So if you add up these numbers, this industry should have gone into a loss. But that has not happened simply because of their increase in operating margins by tremendous amount of productivity benefits. And I think that's a story which we kind of assume, we don't talk about it very often. But that's the most interesting story as far as this industry is concerned. Right? So another interesting figure, you will see that TI and Motorola were the pioneers as far as the Indian software industry is concerned. They were the first companies who set up shop, incidentally, in Bangalore, but these companies have pushed them way back. I mean, today you cannot compare a TI and a Motorola with the kind of advancement which any of these companies have done. So what is it? What is great about the Indian software service industry? We all know that apparently this industry does not have a lot of innovative products. We don't have a Microsoft or an Oracle or an SAP coming out of the industry. So what is great about this industry? In fact, this industry, like some of the other stories which we saw today, has tremendous evidence of managerial and organizational innovation as far as this industry is concerned. So they have been able to the value proposition of this industry is around that fundamental trade-off between cost and quality. All of us know that when we go into the marketplace, we have to face this trade-off. Do we want to buy something which is of high quality or low cost? Because typically, if you want to pay low cost, you end up getting a little bit low on the quality. but the value proposition of this industry has been to the customers, I will do it at low cost, but I will deliver you at high quality, and that has come simply because of the process maturity this industry has. Now, that process maturity has helped this industry in enormous amount of way. It has helped them to acquire customers, to convince that they are extremely good in the kind of job that they are doing, etc. But that is a very fundamental innovation. I will not go too much details into this because I don't have time. I just want to wrap up beyond a point, but I will show some of the innovations quickly. But when we talk of companies from emerging markets going and competing in global markets, one of the things that we talk about is called country of origin liability, and it's something like this. If today you go into the marketplace and you find that there is a box of chocolate which comes from Switzerland and a box of chocolate which comes from Ghana, both of them cost the same, which one would you buy? Switzerland, right? Even if I tell you that Ghana is the world's largest producer of cocoa, maybe you will still buy the Swiss chocolate, fully knowing that most of the stuff that they are doing is probably bought from Ghana. And this is a mindset problem, that we don't, certain countries have certain attributes associated with it, and that we often talk of as country of origin liability. Now, Indian companies also have their country of origin liability. In early 90s, think of Mr. Narayan Murthy or Mr. Ramadurai going and trying to convince a customer that, Mr. Customer, please give me some complex software project which I will go back and do in a place called Mumbai or Bangalore. Obviously, the customer would have tremendous amount of apprehension. Well, I was anyway going to stop, but they are putting hard constraints in front of me. Okay. But interestingly, today you see the software story being told in such a wonderful way everywhere. I mean, if you talk of Friedman talking of a flat world in that celebrated book, he starts off with the software industry in Bangalore. So the beauty of the industry is that they have in fact converted a country of origin liability to a country of origin advantage, and this was very apparent last year when ABN AMRO was reviewing their global outsourcing deal. A deal, I think it was about $8 or $9 billion. And finally, the deal went to IBM, but with a contract saying that a significant portion of the software development will have to be done by Indian software companies. So yes, they still trust IBM to be the great integrator, but they say that I will only give you the contract so long you subcontract it to be done from India. That is today the strength as far as the Indian software industry is concerned. So we are saying that yes, the country of origin liability has got converted to country of origin advantage, because today if you are into software of any kind and if you don't have an India story, then you will actually be punished by the analyst. You will actually be said that your stock price will come and suffer. Where is the India story? I mean, how can you have a company which needs software and which is not either outsourcing or establishing a subsidiary in India? Sir, will we be able to get this one up or? Okay, fine. So I will close it here. I mean, there was not too much that I wanted to convey. But when you compare these industries in terms of auto component, pharmaceutical, and software industry, I think one of the key things that comes about is that apart from the managerial innovations that we talked about, that unlike the software industry, which had a very strong opportunity in front of them, in terms of this digitization, the auto component industry did not have a ready-made opportunity created. So in that sense, probably we should give a lot of credit to this company for having established its foothold. And I guess that is the reason why still the auto component is not an industry-wide phenomenon. I mean, where in the IT industry, the success is an industry-wide phenomenon. So when we look at this, then we find that the IT industry story is about converting an initial opportunity into something which is of sustainable advantage, and that has happened because of their organizational processes, because of this leadership, whereas the auto component story is about one particular person making a lot of very risky decisions, and that is what I think entrepreneurship is all about. And if you map this continuum, then somebody has defined that a leader is a person who manages change, a manager is a person who manages complexity, and an entrepreneur is a person who manages an opportunity. And you find that in the Indian industry, we find examples of all of them, right? So it's very difficult to box this thing, but you find that the leaders in this industry, they manage change, they manage opportunity, as well as they manage complexity. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a patient hearing, and I have enjoyed taking this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mukherji. I must say the chairman's job is among other managing is to manage time, and I'm not too sure I've done a very good job of it. But we have another session following this at 7 o'clock, so I'm sorry we have to try and stick to the time that we have today. Can I now request Mr. Murari Thai to propose the formal vote of thanks?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Sundar Sarukai, the speaker, Assistant Professor Sourav Mukherji, and Dr. Sangeeta Menon. What we heard over the last 90 minutes or so was a very vitalizing kind of a talk by Professor Sourav Mukherji, wherein he brought up the strength of the process, actually. The strength of the process across the spectrum of industries that he covered. He started with automobile, with a case study of Bharat Forge, and went on to the pharma industry. It was all about process, and these industry leaders in their segments actually were observing the success of the software industry continuously across the spectrum, and they decided to follow the good of it. And actually what I hear you saying about the Bharat Forge leadership for the auto sector is actually a global delivery model which he used. And this global delivery model was perfected over the years by the software industry, starting from somewhere in the late 60s, early 70s was where the software industry took its foundation in this global delivery model. The first company, that is GE, brought a mainframe to India because GE felt that we have the kind of skills here to do work for them. So they brought and placed a mainframe in India. I think it was in Bombay, and we had engineers working on them for doing software development for GE. This was somewhere in late 70s, I think. That was the birth of the offshore delivery model, the global delivery model. What we heard you say was Bharat Forge used it beautifully. They sent the design teams there, and then they brought the engineering work here, and they were able to deliver the solutions. The same, pharma used reverse engineering and certain innovations in a very, very smart way that they were able to make the difference in the workplace. Now, he covered a lot about the software industry in flashes by giving very good, the graphs going up and the margins also going up. I'd just like to reflect on one point about the billing rates coming down over the last couple of years. The strength of the software industry is basically the process. And if you take the leading process mature companies in the world, India has more than about 75 to 80% of the highest maturity level of software development process implemented companies in the world. So that actually is the strength, and that's probably the reason why everybody wants to be in the India story. And coming to the billing rate, this process improvement maturity model is such that the customer expects that you are perfecting your process, and hence the productivity will go up definitely. And if you are doing the same kind of work, your rates will have to come down because your productivity goes up with the same set of effort, let's say man hours or man days. So that's the genesis for that billing rate to come down a little bit. But the industry is moving up the value chain. Today, what Bharat Forge is doing is a kind of an engineering service. Today, about 10% of the business in the software industry is done through engineering services. And that will go up. It will move into knowledge outsourcing and things like that. Also, another point I just want to make is this, while software requirements globally will increase, the embedded component of software in things like this and that will also go up over the years. With that, I would like to thank Professor Sourav Mukherji for this very good talk. He brought up the points about how a leader can make all the difference. There were those sectors who used the strengths of some other sector and worked wonders. So it's a lesson for all of us. I'm sure we have some learning from it. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Can I request Dr. Sangeeta to present a memento, please?